so and there's nothing worse, especially when I was doing like the business broker side of it, when somebody approaches you when their business is dying, saying, "Can you help me sell this business?" And you look at all of their financials, and you're like, "I don't even know how you're staying open right now, let alone there's nobody that's going to want to buy this dying business, you know." And so, and you have to turn them away because of that. And it's heartbreaking. And for me, there was quite a few times that those were military people, they were veterans, and it's like, I want to help them more, but like, how do you help somebody that's already kind of at that end, and so that's kind of the other reason why I got into the lending side, was because, if I can help them understand it, help them, actually be able to finance or grow their business properly through funding, that I think is going to be critical in their development of business.
You just mentioned where we wanted to go next, and that is veterans. Obviously, veterans is something very near and dear to your heart, but you help veterans navigate this crazy world of funding.
Absolutely. And so, I mean, the veteran community, obviously, there's a near dear, they're near dear to my heart. Obviously, being a veteran, we all understand the sacrifices that we've made, and understand, especially getting out. Kind of that whole transition out. And so, being able to get into business and find your purpose and your drive, is great and critical and amazing. And so, um that to me is like, I want to keep that going for these people, for veterans, because I know what it felt like not having my purpose after I got out of the military, and it took me a while. And so now it's like, okay, I feel like I found my purpose. And so I know what business owners, a lot of these veteran business owners, that's their purpose. But now that they're out of the military, and they put their blood, sweat, and tears in here after they've already gave their blood, sweat, and tears to the country, and so, um, I will go above and beyond, and swim across the country if I have to try to figure out how I can best help them. Just because we all look after each other.
All right, let's be a coach here for a second. What is the first thing that you think people need to make sure that they think about before they come and start looking for funding?
Yeah. So the first thing I always tell people is establish your business credit. So a lot of people don't realize, or don't realize that business credit does not work like civilian credit, work like personal credit, in the sense that, like, we all have it, right? We're born, we have personal credit, right? It may not be established, right, but it's tied to our social security number. So the common misconception is, oh, I've got an EIN number, that's my credit score, or that's going to be my credit number. Well, that's not the case with business. You have to go through and register and actually start working on that. So even though you may have a business card, even though you may have stuff registered in the business, if you haven't applied for your DUNS number or done any of that, then you're really not doing much for the business credit side. And so you're not helping your business in that sense. So that's kind of my thing, is get your business credit, to start establish, as soon as you get started. It's free. It doesn't cost you anything. And you can go to, like, so the main one is Dun and Bradstreet. It's dnb.com. You can go there, and register for the DUNS. It takes, I believe, like a week or two to get your DUNS number, is what they call it, back. And then once you're there, with your credit cards, and if you do any like net 30 accounts or anything like that, it will start reporting to it. And then that's when you'll start establishing your business credit. But most people don't do that.
It's it's actually something I'd never even heard of. So that's really great advice. What is the biggest mistake, Jared, that you see people make, other than obviously not going and getting their credit started.
Yeah, I mean, so I guess the biggest credit is, or the biggest mistake is using the personal,
Mhm.
and not kind of separating business from personal. And sometimes that can be very hard, especially if you're a sole proprietorship or even a small LLC. It's hard to kind of not intervene, or especially starting out, just because your funds are almost the same sometimes depending on how. But I say it's really critical to split those up and keep those split, because like I said, what the common occurrence is to start using their personal credit cards, using their personal stuff to start funding it. And what I've recently learned, besides it hurting, like if you go to sell a business, besides um trying to figure out your finances, the other thing is that with most people understand that if you get an LLC, right, the LLC is there to protect you, right? They can only sue you for and I'm no lawyer, so this is not legal advice, so please, I probably should put that disclaimer in there. But that an LLC is supposed to protect your assets as a person, your personal assets, from your business assets. But I was watching a video on somebody talking about, a lawyer talking about how if they have that stuff intertwined with their personal, that you may no longer be protected because it's put in there with your personal stuff. And so legally, even there's some risk there if you run it through your personal, which I didn't even realize until recently, that there was that risk.
I was just going to ask you that too. That would be one of the reasons why you definitely want to make sure that you keep everything separate, have different, because, look, just because God forbid your business goes down, that doesn't mean that your whole life has to go down, and if you're careful.
Well, and that's the thing is, and depending on and the same, depending on the industry that you're in, obviously there you may be more at risk for litigation, and obviously at the end of the day, we always want to protect ourselves and take care of ourselves. And I'm not trying to say be a scumbag or anything like that, but if you're kind of in that at risk business, that hey, like say a contractor, because you didn't do the right, or they're saying you did something wrong, or that what I mean, and you get sued, or right, you don't want to have to worry about your personal assets or your personal stuff being at risk just because you decided not to separate them, even though you thought you were safe because you had an LLC.
Right, right. Uh, Jared, how do people get a hold of you? What's the easiest way to get a hold of you?
Yeah, so the easiest way is you can either head to our website at www.lonestarvalorfunding.com. There's a little contact form in there if you feel like filling that out. You can call our numbers there. It's 210-610-1970. Um, or you can contact me directly at admin@lonestarvalor.com. And I'm more than happy to answer your messages directly.
That's great. You can also find Jared at communitypayitforward.us because he is one of our giving partners. Every time that you use Jared, if you tell him that that you were shown the path to him through Community Pay It Forward, he is going to give us some money that's going to go directly to a cause that you support. We don't choose who you support it. So. But Jared, would you like to leave this by leaving anybody any extra information or words of wisdom?
Um, I don't know if there's any. Oh, that's a tough one. I guess just keep moving forward. Just because you have one bad day doesn't mean the next day's got to be bad. Stay positive, and everything will work out for itself.
I love that. Yeah. Look, everybody's going to have a bad day. Some worse than others, and then But if you let it ruin your life, well, that's kind of on you. But yeah, I love that. Well, once again, you can get a hold of Jared at lonestarfunding.com,
No,
lonestarvalorfunding.com. Please remember the valor in there, unlike
please.
your host, your LoneStarValorFunding.com. Where can you work? What
Throughout the United States.
All right, that's very important. So remember, this is something that just because he is in San Antonio doesn't mean that he can't work here in Colorado or wherever you're at. So make sure that if you want a second view, should you always get a second opinion when it comes
I
to
I,
something like this?
I strongly think that getting a second opinion or having options is the best way to go, because why wouldn't you want your finances being competitive? Um, and that's kind of the only downside about going to like a bank, is they're not going to give you any other options. Um,
Right.
you know, so I give options. So
Well, and there you go. And you know what? If he can help save you on your payments, we're not in business to give money away. Well, I guess we kind of are, but
I
yeah, you know, that's kind of what we're both
mm,
doing here a little bit.
yeah.
But you know, your matter of fact, your business is giving money away. So forget that last statement. But we're not in business on giving our money away. How's that? So, but once again, we've been talking to Jared Smith with Lone Star Valor Funding. Got it in there. LoneStarValorFunding.com. You can also contact him at admin@LoneStarValorFunding.com, or give him a call at 210-610-1970. Once again, that's 210-610-1970. Jared, I
If I
want to
don't
thank.
answer, sorry, real quick, if I don't answer, please leave a message, or text me. Sometimes I'm in meetings like this, and I try not to be rude. So please absolutely leave a message. I'm not trying to be rude. So
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. All right, Jared, I want to say officially, welcome to the family. It's great to have you here. Let's get this going. Let's see how many people we can help out, huh?
absolutely, my pleasure.
All right, thank you very much.
Introducing Shop, Click, and Pick, the simplest way to support those doing good. We understand that shopping is a necessity, but with a slight adjustment, you can make a big difference. Here's how it works. Visit communitypayitforward.us and navigate to the Find Your Partners tab. Discover our verified giving partners, trusted allies ready to meet your needs. Shop with any partner that resonates with you. Click a picture of your receipt or invoice. Pick the mission partner you wish to support and use their QR code to send the receipt to us. Then, all you have to do is sit back and enjoy your purchase, knowing you've made a meaningful change for someone in need. Community Pay It Forward amplifies your business's impact by sharing your story with those who require your services, rallying support for those who need us all. Because no one needs to go it alone. When we all come together.
This one's been a long time coming. Darren and I, we finally reconnected after he showed up and helped us out at Family Cubs and Causes, and helped us put together that event that hopefully, we're still working on it, but hopefully is going to have a rebirth this year. And we're going to try it again. But at that point in time, Darren, you were living down in Denver, and
That's right.
Working on harness data consulting, which is still around,
Yep.
But now you've got something extremely exciting and extremely helpful to people, and especially this time of year. Why don't you tell us about Tutor My Math?
Absolutely, Zach, and thank you for having me on the show. I'm super excited to be here. Super cool. So, yeah. Well, as you said, I was living in Denver a few years ago when we first connected. Since then, my partner Kayla and I have been on some fun adventures. We've sold our house in Denver, living fully remotely. We travel full time. We're nomadic. So we have been looking at different ways to have incomes, those kind of things. And the project that's been a big passion piece for me for a long time is tutormymath.com. When the pandemic started, I had just launched Harness Data Consulting, which you mentioned, and just as sort of a thinking about, well, everyone is suddenly switching to virtual learning, the school systems, everything was sort of I guess all of society was kind of in disarray at the time during the start of the pandemic. So I signed up for a Zoom account. I had been tutoring for a number of years. I worked in college as a math tutor. I've done private sessions, since then, just in my own time. And I really had this idea in my mind of how could we change the way that we teach math in schools, or just in general, because I really struggled with math. And when I say really struggled, I was always a B student. I was always in the sort of the the main classes. I was never in advanced classes. I was never in remedial classes. I was always a B student, but I had a very hard time paying attention in class, definitely. And I found that I really just couldn't do math without a calculator. I didn't understand fraction concepts, and as it got harder and harder, I was just less and less interested in it. And I think part of that, from working with the students that I work with these days, is that we spend so much time teaching computation and memorization when math is really about questioning, creative problem solving, and understanding concepts. So I sort of, had a lot of success with Harness Data Consulting, so much so that I was able to take a little bit of time off and really think about, what do I want to do now that I've, we don't own a home, we've sold off most of our possessions, like we've tried as much as possible to eliminate debt, and now it's like, how could I take the success I've had so far and do something that I'm passionate about, but also really give back in a way that I haven't been able to before. And the idea that's always been in my mind is this math tutoring company, and sort of just how I would teach it if I had the opportunity. Does that make sense?
It actually, it makes a lot of sense. And that's one of the reasons why I was so happy that we got back together for this, because we always tell people that, look, we learn how to do what we do because of experiences we've had.
Absolutely.
I had the experience where after my accident, I was told that I couldn't feed my family because I made too much money the previous year. And I completely agree with you on one thing. I couldn't pay attention in math. If they could have lit me on fire,
yes,
and I wouldn't have been able to pay attention. So what are you doing differently that's making it exciting? Or even if not exciting, making it to where people can understand it easier?
Absolutely. And the topic that I am most interested in is divisibility. Are you familiar with divisibility at all?
Yes.
A lot of people have that reaction, right? And a lot of people say, well, is that like division? And it's like division in that we're talking about dividing things, but it's the concept of it. It's the why is that interesting? And what I like to do, the way I try to make it more fun, more interesting, is again, we're focusing on some of these concepts. So understanding, for example, let me give you a specific example, right? There are how many degrees in a circle?
360.
360, very good. Why are there 360 degrees in a circle?
I don't think I've ever heard that question before.
And I don't think that's a question that gets asked in math class very often, right? And as you know, as a math major, as a master in mathematics, like I took a, you start asking questions like that. And the reason why there are 360 degrees in a circle is because 360 is a highly divisible number, this concept of divisibility that we're talking about. And it turns out that goes back to very ancient history. That's Babylonians, that's Egypt. Like, we used numbers that are multiples of 12 as a society, as a civilization, because you can divide it by 2, by 3, by 4, by 5, by 6, by 8, by 9, by 10, by 12. Like, there's a lot of numbers that go into it. It turns out that's a very useful concept. It's useful because it helps build mental math skills, right? We spend so much time focusing on multiplication and trying to know all your multiplication facts. I struggled with multiplication facts. I still, if you ask me what 6 times 8 is, in my brain, I go 36, 42, 48, because that was the trick that I use, and everyone has their own version of the tricks, but we spend so much time like trying to understand, what these facts are. But what divisibility talks about is how to break numbers down into its basic components, right? And that's where you start talking about prime numbers and, some of these connected concepts. But I really love to explore the history of it and then look at the bigger picture, how it connects to, again, it helps with mental math. It comes up in algebra. All the algebra students I'm working with now are, they're constantly breaking down numbers or breaking down functions, which is an analogous concept, just in a different domain, right? So it's like understanding it for numbers helps you understand it for functions. But it also just, bigger picture, like trigonometry, understanding, so many students struggle with trigonometry because they know 360 degrees in a circle. And then suddenly we say, well, now there's 2 pi radians. And it's like, where does that come from? And, again, so like my trigonometry students are then struggling with this new concept. But it turns out if you understand the reason why there are 360 degrees in a circle is because ancient humans realized it had this useful property of being highly divisible. It doesn't actually have anything to do with the circle itself. There's no reason why 360 and a circle go together other than that we made that association. But when you start talking about trigonometry and 2 pi, there's a very mathematical reason for that. It's because it talks about circumference, right? The circumference of a circle is 2 pi times the radius. So you can start to build connections between these concepts. And I just feel very strongly that we spend so much time like teaching algebra, then geometry, then algebra 2, then trigonometry, and you're getting very specific. A lot of the students don't understand the concepts going into it. I like to take a more general approach and show how mathematics has developed historically and how it's still to this day used, in a way that is useful. There's never been a time in history where you couldn't get a high-paying job by knowing math. But there's also just this creative side to it, and that's what I really like to do is challenge my students to think by asking questions, right? By really focusing on the how and the why of some of these concepts instead of just learning those rote memorization steps. Does that make sense, Zach?
You know what? It not only makes sense, but here's something that I had never thought of until you said this. And Darren,
Sure.
When I say I love history, I mean
Absolutely.
love history. I love history. But
Yeah.
you're right. Everything from the pyramids, the pyramids are almost perfect.
Yes,
Math,
so much so.
and the one thing, the ways of life, the languages, the styles, the gods, all those things have changed throughout the year. But the one thing that hasn't changed is the math. I have never thought of that until right now. So see, you've got me thinking now 2 things, So this is getting pretty dangerous. Darren's got me thinking. I don't know if we need to
thinking about math as well.
Yeah. That's actually pretty scary because truthfully, math was one of those things that I always heard as a kid. You need this to survive.
Right.
I'm like,
sure.
Where?
Right.
And
when have you ever had to factor a quadratic in the real world? Yep.
Right. But the thing is that when I got into life and I started cutting steel, even cooking and using angles and stuff like that when you're driving on a motorcycle, being able to anticipate distance and stuff.
Course.
So important a lot of times. And it's all math. It's all math. And so it is kind of funny. And of course, I still felt like an idiot telling my kids that same thing. It's like, look, you need math. Don't think you don't. So,
right.
But
I think you're so right, Zach. I love that.
Yeah, and look, first off, I know you and I used to have conversations when you and I just used to sit down and spit wind at each other and
Yeah.
just sit there and talk about how much you wanted to do this. So
Mhm.
the first thing I want to tell you is congratulations, because I
Thank you.
know how much of a how much this was in your heart. I know how much you wanted to do this. So, brother, from me to you, congratulations on that.
Thank you, Zach. That is so kind of
Um,
you.
you are offering something that is so one of the reasons why we had to get this recorded immediately is because the end of the school season's coming up. And there's
Yes.
some tests that are coming up that kids are needing help with. And you have a wonderful thing that you're doing to help them out.
And SAT and standardized test prep season. And there's more tests than those two, but I think those are the two big ones that everyone's familiar with. And again, I remember going into those tests not really knowing math too well and not being able to do it without a calculator. And I was able to get through. But I'm currently offering a free 1 hour session once a week, and depending on demand, that might increase. But every Thursday night, we are doing ACT SAT test prep session. And the way it works is students show up. I have a registration process so that I know who's coming into the Zoom room. We do everything virtually. And we spend a little bit of time, some warm up with some easier problems. And then I sort of give the options, all the different concepts that you might see on an ACT or on an SAT. We spend a little bit of time reviewing those concepts and then working on actual practice problems from either ACT, SAT tests or study material. I actually just got in the mail a big ACT practice test book that I can use to come up with some problems. So, it's a chance to see actual questions that are on the test, but also just to review concepts. And I want to really create a space where people feel okay saying, I don't know, or to make mistakes, right? Because obviously on the test, you don't want that, but it
Right.
does help your learning process to be able to see a problem, say, I don't know how to do this, and then get that explanation. So it's completely free. All I ask is that people fill out a registration form and have a brief conversation with me about your child's student's math performance. But yeah, it's something I've been thinking about for a long time of how would I do that, because I don't love standardized tests, but they are an unfortunate reality right now of getting into college, and I just want to help people be successful, and that's a big part of how I want to give back with this project.
One of the other things that you want to focus on, and you want to make sure that people get this and understand this clearly, is you also want to teach adults. You want to help adults get their GED, or maybe even just study up or refresh.
Absolutely.
Or look, there's things that if you don't use it, you're going to lose it. So
Exactly.
you might as well get it back and remember, because again, it is so important.
Yeah, and with careers, we're entering into the age of AI, so knowing a little bit of math is never a bad thing in this sort of the world that we're living in. So you're absolutely right. I would love to start doing GED test prep as well for anyone who's looking to take that. So if anyone is planning on taking that, definitely reach out. I can work with you. And again, going back to, I think the main concept that I want to teach is this concept of divisibility, and it connects to this as well, because it's about being able to understand fractions and number concepts so that you can do a lot more of that mental math on these standardized tests, whether it's the ACT, SAT. I'm sure this is true of the GED as well. Having a calculator, some of these questions, they've set it up so that it's a disadvantage. So if you're taking the time to type something into the calculator, there may be a better way to solve that problem to save you time, right? So everything I do is about finding that love of math, filling in those concepts that I know I struggled with. These are the things that I learned, after high school that I wish I'd known, during my high school career. So I definitely feel there are a lot of people who are my age who didn't enjoy math in school. I'm sure that's true of the previous generation and of the current generation. So just want to make it more accessible to everyone.
Yeah. It, like I said, I really think it's cool that you're doing this. And what is the difference between teaching a kid and teaching an adult?
That's a great question. And I think, the challenge is keeping that intuitive, that creative, that fun part of all of it, right? And it's a little bit easier to work with a kid in that respect, because kids love excitement, they love play. Whereas as adults, they've they've already had their bad experiences with math. So now not only you have to sort of get over that initial hurdle of hating math, and that's true for high schoolers as well. But I think the goal is the same in both cases, is let's make this fun. Let's make this about thinking. I want to help people start questioning and thinking for themselves, because I think really that is the value that math education should be bringing. It's not enough to say it's good for helping you solve problems. It's more about being able to ask questions of the world around you, and then having the tools to actually, does that make sense as an answer, to apply the knowledge to what you can see in the world around you and just be more curious about things.
Yeah, but you want to know something? Your answer really kind of surprises me a little bit, because
Sure.
I
What's
thought
that?
for sure that it would be easier to teach the adult, because the kids don't want to be there. But if an adult comes to you,
You're right.
they've got the drive to be there. But then again, it's also harder to keep an adult from sitting there in the classroom going, geez, I could be out having a beer with my buddies or whatever. So
Exactly right. Exactly.
we do have you now in two places on the website, and on the page that you see right in front of you, communitypayitforward.us/services, you will see the page for tutormymath.com. And this is just one of the two services, again, that Darren offers. And I would definitely suggest you do this. Darren, how long are you going to be doing these free classes?
Well, that's a great question, because people are starting to take the ACT in April, but I remember when I was in high school, I actually retook it a second time first couple weeks of summer. So for right now, I'm definitely offering it through June. But again, if there's need further than that, I would like to just continue offering this to anyone who needs help with it, because I think it is so important. And it's a good way for people to see my teaching style, and my hope is that they will want to continue working with me on other things as well. So for now, definitely first few weeks of summer.
A little bit of knowledge every week is also not a bad thing. Probably a lot better to get your kid in and get them learning, give them a little extra time to to see the way things are going, instead of trying to rush everything in into 1 or 2 hour segments. So
that is so often the challenge as a tutor that I see, is parents come to me when it's already not too late, but it's already late in the year and there's already a challenge. The sooner you get started, even if whoever you work with for your child's math education needs, get started right away, because there's always more help that you can get in math.
Yep. So, and they can go to your website, which is tutormymath.com. And this is where they're going to be able to go. And if you scroll down just a little bit, register right here for the free ACT, SAT prep sessions. Find out more about the group tutoring and specialized math courses. So, and
if I could just really quick. Oh yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just wanted to shout out my partner, Kayla. She's really been helping me get everything up to date. So she just did a big overhaul on the website, and it's a very simple site, but I'm very grateful for her. She's put a lot of time into this project as well. So just want to give her a shout out, because she's amazing at getting things done.
Yeah, you know what, man? I don't really truly believe in the words "very simple site." Sites are difficult.
They sure are. They sure are.
Even if they start out very simple, there's something on them that can go wrong, but and make your life a little more difficult. Is there anything else that you wanted to share with anybody before we wrap this up?
I would love to just, I know I've filled in some of the details of my own story, but something that I would want to just mention on, when I was a junior in high school, I had a lot of pressure to pick a career, pick a degree path, something that you can do for the rest of your life that, would turn in, the thing that you do until you retire, essentially. And at that time in my life, I didn't have a ton of confidence in myself. I didn't think I was that capable in most subjects, but specifically in math and science. So I initially picked a career path that was very light in math and science, which is actually aviation. I was going to be a pilot, because I think this. I was actually born in England, so I have a lot of family out in England. So my thought was, well, if I'm a pilot, then I can fly back and forth across the Atlantic. And, that was sort of the idea. But again, it was very, you had to take a trigonometry course and a physics course. And it was because of that, I decided that was going to be my whole life. That was my career choice. My senior year of high school, I decided to switch from taking AP European history into physics. Because I thought, well, at least if I fail physics in high school, I'll have seen it once and then maybe I can get it in college, right? And again, like it was just this mindset that I had about myself of I'm not capable. I don't think that I could do this. But then I had an incredible physics teacher my senior year, and that piqued my interest. And suddenly I saw that all this math we were learning did have an application, and that's how I got into. I graduated 2000, high school in 2009 during the recession. My dad sort of came to me. The only time I really ever seen him get super emotional is when he saw how much.
Unfortunately,
I think we cut out there for a second.
yeah, you were about ready to talk about your dad.
Yeah, so he had seen how much it was going to cost to do an aviation degree, and he got very emotional when he realized what that would be, and that because of the state of the economy, he may not be able to help me with that. And he sat me down and said, really want you to think about this because it is a lot of money, and that's what prompted me to take one semester of classes at a community college, which turned into 2 years. I got an associate's degree in engineering, and suddenly, like, I took calculus, I took all these courses, I was started to enjoy it. But that's where I really found that passion of teaching. Is suddenly, I was meeting up before class with my other classmates, and I was the one up at the board trying to explain it to everyone so they could get their homework done. And that turned into, I challenged myself. I sort of said, I wonder how far I can actually go in math before it becomes too hard. And I never reached that point. I just kept going with it. I ended up doing a master's degree. And the point I tell this story is because if I had gone that route, I'm not sure I would have found a passion in aviation. Whereas I found this passion for teaching and even collaborating, right? Because after that, I entered the business world, and I found that because I had been sort of that person, almost in a leadership type role, like I found that I loved collaborating with other people and trying to solve problems. So like I learned a lot about myself by going through this path. And I just think that there's so many people, we put so much pressure on graduating high school students to figure out what the rest of their life is going to look like. And I just want my students to consider mathematics as an option, because I know they probably right now aren't thinking that would ever be them, but that's the position I was in. I thought I would never do anything math related. And now it's sort of become my life, So I just want people to know that there is a fun side of it. There is a way to do it differently. There is a way that the average. I've never worked with a student that didn't have the potential to be successful in math. Every single student I work with, every student who says to me, I don't like math, I say, but why? Because you can do it. I see the potential in you. It just hasn't been